if I'm a Galilean Jew and I'm in Jerusalem on Sabbath, where am I going to feel most comfortable going to synagogue? I'm thinking with the Hellenists. I'm thinking if I'm a Galilean, you know, Galilee was north of Samaria. I mean, it's a long ways from Judea. And it's there on the trade routes. And the Galileans, a lot of them caught fish. What'd they do with their fish? Sold it. Salted it, sold it to these traveling Gentile bands. So Galilee was very open to Gentiles. Judea was not. It was more, I would suggest, Hellenistic than was Judea. So I'm guessing, I'm guessing that that the apostles went to synagogue, and the early disciples went to synagogue every Sabbath, and I'm guessing the Galileans went to a Hellenist synagogue. Now here's my next big supposition. Could it be that these people knew these fellows from synagogue? Making it all the more shocked when, after having heard them speak in synagogue maybe, or read, to hear them talk like this was a shock. I don't know. But there may have been, in other words, already some knowledge of the Hellenist community, and that the apostles may have been known among them already. Yeah, if you were, like some of these Hellenist Jews, when you read the list there, they were converts to Judaism. So if they went down to the temple, they couldn't go into the same court with the Judean Jews. Their brethren, as we would call them, had to stay in the outer court. That's okay. I mean, even there, that's, at least in synagogue, you can meet with your own kind, you know, your own people. But if you went to the temple, they started getting segregated down there, and so that could be very, the teaching had to be done in the outer courts. So okay, good. Well, see, here we get some ideas of one, the Spirit was at work with these Hellenistic Jews, and the question was, how did the disciples come? And we've mentioned all of it. It sounds accidental, but yet they were doing all the right things. They were on a holiday. They were in the right place. They had the right message, the right phenomena, the right things at the right time to reach a certain focus group. And this focus group was strategic, were they not? Because they were going to be the ones who were going to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. To Samaria? Well, who takes the gospel to Samaria? I mean, Jesus did, of course, all right. We know Jesus and the Samaritan woman. If he hadn't done that, there would have been no precedent for going to Samaria, I'll tell you. I don't think anybody would have gone to Samaria. Jesus. Because remember, what did the disciples say? Jesus said he was offering eternal life to the Samaritan woman, what were the disciples saying about the Samaritan villages? Let's call down fire on them.
Let's nuke them.
So I don't think they would have gotten up there. They had Jesus' example, but who went to Samaria? We're not there yet, but who went? Philip. And Philip was?
One of the 6, or 7.
Yeah, Hellenist. So this is strategic here for the development of the church to reach this particular focus group. Dan Spader of Sun Life Ministries talks about the person of peace. Remember, some of you were there, you know, the person of peace. Jesus strategized, he said, that he reached key people to get into a community. And to get into a community, find out the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
The Samaritan woman was the gatekeeper, and was she?
Yes.
Yeah, proved that she really was.
Yeah.
Other certain key people, Jesus seemed to focus on and had a profound effect. These were key people right here. These Hellenistic Jews were key to the future. So sometimes you strategize yourself in the community, say, who do we need to reach in the community that we can reach the community through? Let's take a look at Acts 2, verses 42 through 47. Here's the fellowship of the believers. Now Luke loves lists. I don't know if you've noticed that, but Luke likes lists. And he shows us in his list the continuing and consistent pattern of behavior of the church, is the way he likes to put it. So the Hellenistic lists were a topos. And so Paul and Luke follow this kind of idea of listing. Now, having said that, one of the points is to realize that that's just what it is. It's a literary listing. don't bend it all out of shape and make some prescriptive thing of it. In other words, what obviously has been done by those who are, let's say, anti-female, or don't think they are, but just think that women have their place,
Just live like
which is down here. They take the typical household list and make that a prescriptive for all times, for all Christians everywhere, when it was just a Hellenistic list reflecting what the culture thought at the time the household ought to look like. You gotta be, I think, a little careful of taking those things and pressing them way too far out of their intent. All right, let's look at this here in Acts 2, the fellowship of the believers, the koinonia. They devoted themselves or persevered in the apostles' teaching. So the apostles here are continuing the teaching ministry of Jesus. And to the fellowship, koinonia, meaning fellowship, participation, communion, and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread. Do you think that means eating meals, or do you think that means communion, Lord's Supper?
And both, maybe?
I'd say both. They didn't necessarily separate the two at that time. And the breaking of bread, and to, it's plural, prayers. And by that, it's assumed that they mean the three prayer times at the temple, evening, morning, and noon will I pray, David said. So what it tells us is that they were engaging in community prayer. That they were going actually to the temple courts and praying with the community. Now that's an interesting point right there. Their community went to the community place of prayer to pray. Everyone was filled with awe. The Greek word there is phobos, or we might want to say in English phobos, phobia, fear. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. Why? Because they were prophets. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions, their property, their belongings, and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. This is exactly the Hellenistic topos, that friends hold all things in common. So when Luke says they held all things in common, what's he saying? Not only that they held things in common, but classic Hellenistic friendship. These people were a close communion of friends. In fact, if you'd ask the Hellenistic philosophers about friendship, they would say that if you fit all these little slogans on friendship, you have utopia, a utopian community. And doesn't that sound like what Luke is describing here? I mean, good grief, look at these folks. They're devoted, everyone's filled with awe, all the believers were together, had everything in common, sold their position, gave to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God, enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. How sweet it is. The church looks perfect. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll go to that church. And by the way, here's one of Luke's little code phrases you want to be aware of. With glad, to rejoice or to be glad with sincere hearts. Anytime you rejoice or you're glad, you're sincere, that's Luke's way of saying authentic Christian community. The authentic Christian community is recognized with glad, rejoice, sincerity, authentic. Now, why does that? It's more because what you're going to find is later he begins to describe Gentile communities. And what he's saying is they're just like this. They're like this Acts 2, like us when we started. That's who they are.